Waitress secretly fed a quiet black boy. Every day. Until 4, black SUVs pulled up to her diner. Jenny Caldwell moved like clockwork through Rosie's Diner, the kind of roadside spot where the smell of bacon lingered in the walls and the sound of the bell above the door was as familiar as her own heartbeat. Every morning she slipped on her pink uniform, pulled her blonde curls into a loose ponytail, and clocked in just before sunrise. She liked the quiet hours when the booths were mostly empty and the coffee was still strong enough to taste like something. It was on one of those early mornings that she first noticed him. A boy, maybe 10 or 11, with dark skin, big brown eyes, and a backpack that looked heavier than his body. He slipped in through the door just after 7 a.m., shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear. He didn't say a word. He just slid into the corner booth by the window, the one that always had a stubborn scratch on the table like a crooked scar. Jenny approached with a half-hearted smile. "Hey there, hun, you lost?" He shook his head. "You waiting on someone?" He looked down, fingers fidgeting with the frayed zipper on his jacket. Jenny didn't push. Instead, she poured a glass of water, set it in front of him, and moved on to her next table. That first day, he sat there for an hour. No order, no movement, just quiet observation, as if memorizing the rhythm of the diner. Then he stood up and left without a word. The next morning, he was back. Same booth, same silence. By the third morning, Jenny brought him a small plate of pancakes, unasked. She placed it in front of him gently. "Eat," she said softly. "I won't tell." He blinked at her, then nodded once. His hands moved fast, fork trembling slightly. He didn't look up once while he ate. After that, it became routine. Each day, the boy came in around 7:10. Jenny would set out a plate, sometimes pancakes, sometimes eggs, depending on what she could sneak past the kitchen without getting side-eyed by Mark, the manager. Jenny didn't know why she did it. Maybe it was the way the boy never asked for anything. Maybe it was the hunger in his eyes that spoke louder than words. Or maybe it was because once, years ago, she had been a kid like him, quiet, invisible, and hoping someone would care enough to notice. "You got a soft spot for strays now?" Kathy, the senior waitress, scoffed one afternoon as she watched Jenny slide a plate across the counter. "He's just a kid," Jenny muttered. "Exactly. Probably up to no good." Jenny ignored her, but still, she couldn't shake the unease growing in her gut. She didn't even know his name. One rainy Wednesday, the boy came in soaking wet. His hoodie was dripping, his shoes squeaked on the tile floor. Jenny rushed to grab a towel from the back. "Here," she said, kneeling next to the booth. "You'll catch a cold like that." He stared at her for a second. Then, in the smallest voice she'd ever heard, he said, "Thank you." It was the first time he'd spoken. Jenny's chest tightened. She didn't press him for more. A few minutes later, Kathy wandered over, arms crossed. "What's he even doing here every day, huh? This isn't a shelter." Jenny stood. "He eats." "That's it. You're feeding him for free." "I'm feeding a hungry kid." Mark noticed, too. That night, he pulled Jenny aside. "You gotta stop this," he said flatly. "Health codes, liability, optics. You're putting the diner at risk." "Then take it out of my tips," she snapped. "I don't care." Mark stared at her like she'd grown 2 heads. "You're gonna lose your job over some nobody?" Jenny didn't answer. She just turned and kept walking. The next morning, the boy didn't come, nor the next day, or the day after that. Jenny waited, eyes flicking toward the door at 7:10, then again at 7:30, then again at 8. The booth stayed empty. By the 5th day, Kathy was already saying, "Told you." "Probably just scamming you." Jenny didn't argue. but something in her chest hurt in a way she didn't understand. It wasn't about guilt. It was absence. The kind that creeps up when you don't know someone's name, but their silence echoes louder than their presence ever did. She kept making the pancakes anyway. Kept leaving them at the booth, just in case. On the 10th day of his absence, a man in a suit came in during lunch and snapped a photo of the empty plate. Jenny caught him mid-click. "Can I help you?" He smirked. "Just capturing the new charity trend. Heard y'all are serving imaginary friends now." He left before she could respond. That night, the picture appeared on a local Facebook group with the caption, "Rosie's Diner now serving ghosts. Or is this a PR stunt?" The comments were worse. "Probably fake. No kid. Just looking for attention. Feeding strays only creates dependence. That waitress needs therapy." Jenny scrolled through them at 2 a.m., alone in her apartment, a half-finished glass of wine on the counter. Her thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. Her chest ached with something she couldn't name. She opened the old wooden box under her bed. Inside, a single photo of her father in his army medic uniform. Tucked beneath it, a journal. His handwriting filled the pages, some faded, some smudged. She flipped to a marked page and read aloud. "Shared a half ration with a local kid today. Johnson said I was stupid, that he might betray us. But the look in his eyes, same as mine when Ma saved me the last biscuit during the Dust Bowl. You don't grow poor by sharing. You grow poor by forgetting." Jenny closed the book slowly. She didn't know the boy's name, but she knew hunger. And hunger, she thought, didn't ask for ID. It asked for breakfast, and someone to notice. The 12th day came and went, and still no sign of the boy. Jenny had stopped setting out the pancakes, but she hadn't stopped looking at the door every time the bell rang. Each shift at Rosie's Diner felt heavier, like a thread had been pulled loose in the fabric of her routine. On the 13th day, she noticed something strange. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, dressed in a navy pantsuit with a clipboard tucked under her arm, came in and sat in the farthest booth, watching, not eating, not talking. Just observing. She left after an hour without saying a word. "Friend of yours?" Kathy asked that afternoon, raising an eyebrow. "Nope," Jenny replied, though unease crept up her spine. The next morning, the woman was back, this time with a different man, older, wearing an earpiece. Then again, the day after. Each time, they sat in silence, eyes scanning the diner with a focus that didn't match the coffee and eggs kind of place it was. Jenny tried to brush it off, but it lingered. That night, she stopped by the old elementary school near her apartment. She didn't know what she was looking for. Maybe a familiar backpack, maybe the boy's face in a crowd. But the school secretary politely told her they couldn't release student information to non-relatives. Jenny left feeling stupid for even trying. She passed a park on her walk home and paused at the sight of a child sitting alone on the swings. Her heart jumped, but as she approached, the boy looked up. Not him. Still, she sat on the nearest bench for a long while, watching the world go by in its quiet, careless rhythm. By day 15, the Facebook post had gone viral. Over 1,000 comments now, some mocking, some defensive. Jenny's name wasn't mentioned, but a few locals had made the connection. She walked into her shift that morning to find Mark waiting by the counter, arms folded, jaw tight. "You see this?" he asked, holding his phone out to her. She nodded. "I saw. I've had reporters call. Customers asking if we're doing stunts." "You brought this mess here." "I didn't post anything." "No, but you gave them the show." Jenny stayed quiet. "You're a waitress, Jenny, not a damn saint." That stung more than she thought it would. She swallowed hard and nodded. Understood. She worked her shift like nothing had changed, though everything had. The whispers were louder now. Some customers watched her the way people watch stray dogs, curious, a little wary. That night after closing, she stayed late, scrubbed tables that didn't need scrubbing. Took down salt shakers just to clean the lids. She just didn't want to go home. Not yet. As she was locking up, a hand tapped her shoulder. She jumped and spun around. It was the boy. He was standing near the edge of the lot, hoodie pulled up, hands deep in his pockets. He looked thinner, older somehow in just 2 weeks. "Hey," Jenny said, voice catching. "Hi," he murmured. His voice was even quieter than she remembered. "Where have you been?" "I was starting to think. I didn't know what to think." He looked away. "Had to leave. Some people came asking questions. I got scared. Are you okay?" He hesitated. "I'm fine. Just tired." Jenny stepped closer. "Are you hungry?" He didn't answer, but his eyes did. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a wrapped sandwich she hadn't eaten during her break. "Take it," she said. He did. As he turned to leave, she called out, "Wait, what's your name?" He looked back over his shoulder. "Don't matter." "It does to me." He stared at her for a long second, then gave the tiniest smile. "Malik." And with that, he disappeared into the night. Jenny didn't sleep that night. She kept hearing the name in her head like a prayer. Malik. She repeated it like it would anchor him to the world, keep him from vanishing again. The next morning, she arrived at Rosie's early. It was barely 6 and the sun hadn't risen yet. As she fumbled for the keys, she noticed something strange. There were fresh footprints on the sidewalk outside the diner. Just one set, small, leading up to the door, and a paper bag leaning against the glass. Inside was a thank you note, written in uneven block letters. "You didn't ask who I was. You just fed me. Thank you." Jenny pressed the note to her chest. For a brief moment, everything in the world felt still. Then, as she looked up, something caught her eye. Across the street, parked by the curb, was a black SUV. Tinted windows. "Engine off. Watching." Jenny's hand went cold on the door handle. Whatever story Malik was part of, it was far from over. Jenny couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The black SUV hadn't moved all morning. She watched from the counter as it remained parked across the street, windows dark, engine quiet, no sign of life inside. Kathy joked it was probably a government van tapping phone lines, but Jenny didn't laugh. It didn't feel like a joke. That afternoon, a man came in, tall, mid-40s, with the kind of crisp button-down shirt and polished shoes that didn't belong in a small-town diner. He ordered black coffee, sat in the same booth Malik used to sit in, and barely touched his drink. Every few minutes he looked toward Jenny, not flirtatiously, not curiously, just watching. She approached the booth cautiously. "Everything all right, sir?" He looked up at her with eyes that had seen more than most. "You're Jenny, right?" Her spine stiffened. "Yeah. Do I know you?" "No. But someone important does." He reached into his inner jacket pocket and slid a business card across the table. No name. Just an emblem. Department of Defense. Jenny didn't touch it. "What's this about?" The man's voice remained calm. "It's not a warning. It's a thank you." She stared at him. For what? For not asking questions. For giving a kid something no agency, no program, no mission could ever offer. Consistency. "You fed Malik without asking why he came alone every morning. That mattered more than you know." Her breath caught. "Who are you?" I'm not at liberty to say much. But I was close to his father. We've been trying to track Malik for a while. He went off-grid after some things fell apart back home. We didn't know he was still in this state until your diner showed up in a Facebook post. Jenny's stomach twisted. So you saw the comments, the photos? He nodded. It wasn't supposed to happen that way, but it gave us our first lead in months. She folded her arms. He's just a kid. Exactly why we need to find him before someone else does. That sentence hung heavy in the air. She felt a chill run down her spine. Someone else? There are people who'd exploit a boy like Malik. His father had enemies. And they know Malik exists. It's why we were watching. Jenny leaned in. So what happens now? We need to know if he came back. If he's reached out. She didn't answer. The man finished his coffee in a single sip and stood. You're not in trouble, Ms. Jennings. You did something remarkable. Just, if he contacts you again, call the number on that card. He's not just some runaway. Then what is he? She asked, her voice low. The man didn't answer. He simply left the card on the table and walked out. Jenny stared at it for a long time. Then she slipped it into her apron pocket and went back behind the counter. The next few days were a blur of nerves. The SUV disappeared, but now Jenny felt eyes everywhere. She started looking over her shoulder, triple-checking the locks at night. Her sleep was thin and restless. Then, on the fourth day, she found a note slipped under the back door. Same handwriting. Block letters. Just 3 words, don't trust them. She froze. That night, she sat alone in her tiny kitchen, the note spread on the table in front of her, the business card beside it. She didn't know who they were or who to believe. The man in the diner had been calm, respectful, but he'd said things that didn't add up. What kind of enemies? What kind of father leaves his kid to fend for himself without a word? The next morning, as Jenny unlocked the diner, something caught her eye. A folded piece of fabric left on the table inside Malik's booth. She opened the door and cautiously approached. It was a small navy hoodie. Tucked into the front pocket was another note. Thank you for not giving me away. I'll be okay. Don't look for me. She sat down hard on the edge of the booth, the hoodie still warm, like it had just been left there. Behind the counter, Kathy was watching. Was that him again? She asked, softer than usual. Jenny didn't reply. Kathy came over, sat across from her. I still think you're crazy, but maybe you're also right. Jenny managed a sad smile. I'm not sure what I am anymore. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Kathy said, You know, you could have looked the other way. Most people would have, but you didn't. Jenny folded the note and placed it gently inside the hoodie. It's not about being a hero. I just couldn't ignore him. That night she called the number on the business card. A woman answered, voice crisp, clipped. Department line. Who's speaking? Jenny hesitated, then ended the call without a word. Something in her gut told her the story wasn't as simple as they'd let on, and until she knew the full truth, she wasn't handing over that boy to anyone. The next morning at Rosie's diner started like any other, with the clatter of coffee cups, the scent of bacon, and the soft hum of morning conversation. But Jenny moved through her routine with a tightness in her chest. She kept glancing toward the front door, half expecting another stranger in a government-grade shirt to walk in. The business card still sat in her apron pocket like a weight. At exactly 7:14 a.m., 1 minute before Malik used to appear, the bell above the door jingled. But it wasn't Malik. Instead, a girl walked in. Couldn't have been more than 16. Her coat was too big, her shoes duct-taped at the toes, and her eyes darted like a deer in an open field. Jenny's instincts kicked in immediately. "Morning," she said gently, wiping her hands on her apron. "You can sit anywhere you'd like." The girl hesitated, then slid into Malik's old booth. Jenny didn't ask questions. She just brought a plate of pancakes and a glass of milk. The girl blinked. "I didn't order." "I know, just eat." The girl stared at the food for a long time. "You're her," she whispered. "You're the waitress who helped him." Jenny's hands froze mid-wipe on the counter. "Helped who?" The girl's lips trembled. "Malik?" "My cousin." Jenny sat down slowly across from her. "Is he okay?" The girl looked around, lowered her voice. "He's in hiding." "I don't know where. He doesn't trust anyone, not since." "What happened?" Jenny's heart pounded. What happened? The girl, whose name was Ava, explained that Malik had been living with her after his mother vanished. Their uncle, a dishonorably discharged military contractor, had taken an unhealthy interest in the boy, asking questions about passwords, accounts, documents their father might have left behind. "I think he thought Malik had access to something," Ava said, eyes wide with fear. "Government files, maybe." "Stuff their dad hid." Jenny's mouth went dry. "But Malik never mentioned his father." "He wouldn't, not even to me." But when their dad died, some weird things started happening. Men following them. Phones glitching. He figured someone from his father's past was trying to find whatever was left behind. Jenny remembered the black SUVs, the man who claimed to know Malik's father, the vague warnings. Her gut twisted. "Why come to me?" "Because you're the only adult he trusted. He wrote about you in his journal." "Said you made him feel normal." Jenny looked away, throat tight. "I'm scared," Ava added. "I don't know who to trust. I don't even know if the people looking for him are really from the government." Jenny felt her fingers curl into fists on the table. She wasn't trained for any of this. She was a waitress with a rusty sedan, an overdrawn checking account, and a heart too soft for her own good. But right now, that heart was the only shield between a kid in danger and the wolves circling him. "I need to find him," she said. "No," Ava said sharply. "He said to tell you not to. He said if anything happened, you were supposed to pretend he never existed." Jenny shook her head. "I can't do that." "Not if someone's after him." "You'll put him in more danger." The words hung heavy. Jenny stood slowly, wiped her hands again even though they were already clean. "If he comes back, tell him I'm still here. And that sometimes, not asking questions doesn't mean not caring. It means giving someone the time to be ready." Ava nodded. Then she stood, took one last look around the diner, and walked out. Later that night, Jenny sat alone in her apartment, Malik's last note in one hand, the Department of Defense card in the other. Her phone was on the table, unused. She didn't dial. Instead, she opened her laptop and searched for the name she hadn't dared look up until now. Staff Sergeant Eli Thomas. The internet filled with headlines, photos, news clippings. Eli Thomas, a decorated Special Forces operative, presumed dead during a covert operation overseas, survived by one son, Malik Thomas. Jenny sat back in her chair, shaken. This wasn't just about pancakes or charity. Malik was at the center of something bigger, something dark, dangerous, and unfinished. She had two options now. Call the number, hand everything over. Or trust her gut, the same one that told her to serve a quiet, hungry boy every morning without ever prying. She turned off the laptop, tucked the business card into a drawer, and whispered to the empty room, "We're not done yet, kid." Then she locked her door, pulled the curtains tight, and waited for a knock, a message, a sign. Anything to tell her the next move. Because one thing was certain. The game had just changed. And this time, she wasn't sitting out. The rain was soft that morning, just enough to blur the neon signs outside Rosie's diner and smudge the chalk menu board Jenny had carefully updated the night before. Her shift had barely started when she noticed the black sedan parked across the street again. Third time this week. Always different plates, but the same subtle tailpipe twitch, the same angled mirror tilt. She didn't need military training to know someone was watching. Inside, the diner buzzed with normalcy. Regulars drank coffee, couples shared waffles, and a baby in a corner booth gurgled while smashing scrambled eggs into his cheeks. But Jenny's heart wasn't in it. She felt hunted, and not just for information. Whatever Malik had been tangled up in, it was reaching further than she expected. Maybe too far. At 9:07 a.m., the door opened, and a man stepped in who didn't belong. He was tall, clean-shaven, dressed in a charcoal suit that was just a little too sharp for this town. His eyes scanned the room like a heat sensor. When they landed on Jenny, he smiled, a smile too polished to be friendly. "You must be Jenny," he said, walking up to the counter. Jenny set down the coffee pot a little too hard. "You with the army?" "No," he said smoothly, pulling out a leather wallet. "Call me Agent Cross." "Homeland Security." Her throat tightened. "What do you want?" "We have reason to believe you've had contact with someone connected to a classified investigation." Jenny gave him nothing. Cross leaned in just enough to be unnerving. A boy, black, around 13. "Comes in here regularly, name unknown, quiet type." She didn't flinch. "I serve a lot of quiet kids," he smirked. "We've got surveillance footage, Jenny. We know you fed him." "Protected him. Don't make this harder than it has to be." She folded her arms. "What's he done?" Cross's eyes flickered. "It's what he might be carrying. Not information. Leverage. Something left behind by his father." "You think you're helping some stray kid, but you could be obstructing a national security matter." Jenny felt a cold rage crawl up her spine. "So you send SUVs, scare my staff, and tail me like I'm the criminal? Let's not be dramatic. We're just trying to keep everyone safe." "Yeah." "Then why does it feel like you're the ones chasing a kid into hiding?" Cross's smile slipped. "Watch yourself, Miss Millers. You're a waitress, not a whistleblower." She leaned across the counter. "And you're not the first man to underestimate me." The door chimed again, and Ava stepped in, raincoat dripping, backpack slung low. She froze when she saw Cross. Jenny reacted fast. "Bathroom's closed, honey. Try the one at the gas station down the street." Ava got the message. She nodded and backed out quickly. Cross pretended not to notice, but Jenny saw his jaw tighten. "You're going to regret protecting him," he said. She leaned closer. "And you're going to regret walking into my diner with threats instead of compassion." He slid a business card across the counter. "When you come to your senses, call me." She didn't touch it. When Cross left, the room seemed to exhale. A few customers who'd heard the conversation tried not to look. One older man gave Jenny a respectful nod. She walked into the back room and locked the door behind her. Her hands trembled as she dialed. When Ava answered, Jenny whispered, "He was here. I saw him. Did he follow you?" "I don't think so." "Then listen. Tell Malik to stay hidden. But tell him I need to see what his father left. Not to keep it. Just to understand why they're so desperate to get it." There was silence. Then Ava replied, "He already wanted you to see it. He just wasn't sure if he could trust anyone yet." Jenny exhaled slowly. He can trust me. That night, a flash drive arrived at her doorstep inside a sealed envelope. No return address, just her name in block letters. She hesitated before plugging it into her old laptop. The files inside weren't labeled, just a series of folders with strange acronyms and video files, some dated as recently as a few weeks ago. Jenny clicked on one. A grainy video played. A military base. A man, Malik's father, speaking in low tones to someone off camera. Words like unauthorized detainment, black site, civilian oversight breach. Jenny covered her mouth. Whatever Eli Thomas had uncovered, it was big enough to get someone killed, and now it was in her hands. Suddenly, this wasn't just about pancakes or kindness. It was about justice, and what came next would define everything. The following morning, Jenny woke with a pit in her stomach and the flash drive still clutched in her hand. She hadn't slept. All night she'd replayed the video in her mind. Eli Thomas's quiet voice, the urgency in his eyes, the faint whirring of an off-screen drone. The weight of what she had stumbled into was now undeniable. She wasn't just hiding a scared boy anymore. She was sitting on evidence that could bring down people in very high places. At the diner, things felt off. The usual warmth was still there. Linda cracking eggs on the grill, Gus sipping his black coffee, old couples bickering sweetly over syrup. But beneath the surface, Jenny could feel the ripple of tension. She knew they were being watched. It wasn't paranoia. It was fact. She spotted the man in the gray hoodie first. He wasn't reading the menu. He was watching her. Another guy, pretending to check his phone, had barely touched the muffin he ordered an hour ago. Government. Private contractor? She didn't know, but they weren't here for the pancakes. Jenny kept her cool. She poured coffee, smiled, took orders. But her hands were shaking. At 10:23 a.m., the front door opened again, and Malik walked in. She nearly dropped a glass. He had never come in at this time before, never during the busy brunch hours. His hood was low, and he moved fast to a booth in the far back, head down. Jenny didn't make eye contact. She simply walked toward him with a pot of coffee and slid into the booth opposite. "What are you doing here?" she whispered urgently. "They're watching the apartment. I saw them from the alley. Ava and I split up." "Jesus," she muttered. "You shouldn't have come here. I needed to tell you something about the flash drive." Jenny glanced around. The man in the hoodie was now pretending to read the newspaper upside down. "Make it fast," she murmured. Malik reached into his backpack and pulled out a worn notebook. "My dad kept logs. This is the backup. Names, dates, even coordinates. He wasn't just watching people. He was documenting everything." Jenny flipped through the pages quickly. Code names, military personnel, something about off-the-record renditions and domestic surveillance violations. "This could blow open the entire base," she whispered. "No wonder they're desperate." Malik's face was pale, but his eyes were steady. "They won't let this get out. I don't think they care who gets hurt." Jenny swallowed hard. "Then we have to make sure it does get out." She stood and walked back toward the kitchen. As she passed Linda, she said quietly, "I'm taking my break in the alley. Cover me." Linda, not missing a beat, nodded once. "Got it." In the alley behind the diner, the air was damp and heavy. Jenny pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. When the voice answered, deep and familiar, she didn't wait. "Tony, I need a favor." "Jenny, it's been a minute." "I'm calling it in. Remember that thing you owe me?" There was a long pause. "You serious?" "I have files. Military. Classified. A boy's life is in danger. So is mine." You still have contacts in the press? I've got better than that, Tony said. I have a friend at ProPublica. You want this out? We can do it right. Verified. Protected. Jenny's shoulders sagged. Send me an encrypted drop link. I'll get everything to you tonight. After hanging up, she returned inside, her face calm but her heart racing. The man in the hoodie was gone. But the tension hadn't lifted. That night, back in her apartment, Jenny uploaded every file. The drive, the notebook scans, the video, and then she wrote a letter. Not to the press, to Malik. She slid it into his backpack when he visited after hours, left a plate of hot food on the table, and simply hugged him tighter than she ever had before. We're doing the right thing, she whispered. It's going to be okay. He looked up at her. Even if they come for us? Especially then. Neither of them noticed the blinking red light on the power pole across the street. But someone else did, and they were already making a call. Jenny didn't sleep that night. Her phone kept lighting up with alerts from the secure folder Tony had set up. By 3 a.m., the files had been downloaded more than a dozen times by verified journalists and legal advisors. The story was out. Or at least, it was beginning to breathe. She stared at the ceiling of her small apartment, arms folded under her head, mind spinning with worry and adrenaline. There was no going back now. If they came for her, she was ready. But what about Malik? What about Ava? The next morning, she walked into Rosie's diner like nothing had changed, but it had. The shift was subtle. Customers looked at her longer, smiled wider. A regular named Mr. Donnelly left a note on his check that simply read, "We're with you." Linda leaned over the counter while pouring coffee and whispered, "I saw the article, the one from that investigative site." You really doing this? Jenny nodded slowly. Damn, Linda muttered, a mixture of awe and fear in her voice. You know they're not going to let that slide. That afternoon, the bell above the diner door rang again, but this time it didn't sound casual. It rang with a sharpness that made everyone turn. 4 black SUVs had pulled up outside minutes before, and now 3 figures in dark suits entered the diner like they already owned the place. One man flashed a badge too quickly to read. We're looking for Jenny Carter. She stepped forward calmly. That's me. We need you to come with us. Jenny raised an eyebrow. On what grounds? The man hesitated. We're conducting an investigation regarding a matter of national security. It's best you cooperate. I'll call my attorney, Jenny said, reaching for her phone. You can do that, he replied, trying to keep his tone even, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. Malik appeared from the hallway near the bathrooms, freezing when he saw the suits. Jenny shot him a sharp glance that said, Don't move. He obeyed. As the agents turned to glance at the boy, another man walked in through the front door. Older, black, with salt and pepper hair, wearing a military dress uniform that shimmered with medals under the morning light. Agent Renshaw, the man said, voice full of steel. Stand down. The agents hesitated. Renshaw's lip twitched. General Dawson. Sir, we weren't informed. That's because you weren't supposed to be, Dawson said, stepping forward with a command that silenced the entire diner. This woman has already submitted evidence to federal oversight. She is under protection now. If you lay one hand on her without due process, I will personally see to it that your badge becomes a coaster. The agents glanced at each other, then slowly backed off. One murmured an apology and turned to leave, the others trailing behind him. Jenny stood frozen. Who are you? She asked the man. Dawson turned to her and extended his hand. Major General Anthony Dawson, Department of Defense. Your files reached the right people, including me. I didn't know. I just did what I thought was right. You did more than that. You exposed a hidden program targeting vulnerable citizens. You protected a child. You stood up where others would have stayed quiet. Jenny nodded slowly. What happens now? Now, he said, we take it from here. But you may want to keep your doors locked for a while. The people you exposed have deep roots. It'll take time to cut through them. As Dawson turned to leave, he stopped near Malik and gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. You've got people now, son. You're not alone anymore. Malik's lips parted slightly, like he wanted to say something, but all that came out was a whisper. Thank you. The general nodded and exited with precision. Later that night, Jenny sat at the counter, the diner empty, the lights dimmed low. Malik helped her clean the tables. Neither spoke for a while. Do you think it's really over? Malik finally asked. Jenny looked at him, eyes tired but clear. No, but it's beginning. He nodded. I didn't think anyone would care this much. They do, she said. They just needed someone to remind them how. He smiled. I think my dad would have liked you. Jenny paused. I would have liked him too. Outside, the last SUV pulled away into the darkness. Inside, hope settled into the booths where fear used to sit. It had been 6 weeks since the day 4 black SUVs lined the front of Rosie's diner like a scene out of a movie. The whispers hadn't stopped, but something else had grown louder. Respect. The booth by the window where Malik used to sit was no longer empty. Some days it was occupied by local veterans. Other times, a single mom with 2 kids found a quiet moment there. No one asked questions. Meals were served without charge, and the staff had a silent understanding. Kindness didn't need explanation. Jenny still worked the morning shift, though everything about her life had changed. She had testified behind closed doors, helped bring attention to a program that had quietly failed thousands of children of deployed soldiers. The exposure led to a full-scale investigation by the Inspector General, and though the system didn't collapse overnight, cracks began to show. 2 high-ranking officials were suspended pending further review. The local family services office replaced its entire upper management. And most importantly, a new federal initiative, Project Valor, was launched, aimed at identifying and supporting children of active-duty military facing abandonment or neglect. But Jenny didn't care about the press conferences or the polished speeches. She cared about Malik, who now lived with his aunt in Atlanta, thriving in a school that celebrated him rather than treating him like a problem. They FaceTimed once a week. He always ended the call with, "Don't forget the pancakes when I visit." Late one afternoon, Jenny walked into the diner to start her shift and noticed something sitting at the counter, a small framed photo and a folded American flag. Her manager, Mark, stood beside it, a strange softness in his eyes. "Someone dropped this off for you," he said quietly. "Didn't leave a name, just asked me to set it here." Jenny approached slowly. The photo showed Sergeant Curtis Thompson in uniform, standing beside Malik as a child, both laughing mid-motion. The flag was folded with precision, the kind of reverence only a soldier would offer. Beneath it, a note was tucked. She unfolded it carefully. To the one who remembered what the world forgot, from a father who died knowing his son had someone watching. Semper Fidelis. Jenny sat down, holding the note for a long time. Her throat tightened, but this time she didn't cry. There was no sorrow left, only gratitude. That evening, the diner hosted a quiet event. A few members of the military, a local journalist who had covered her story with grace, some strangers who had been moved by what they'd read online. No speeches, no cameras, just people eating together, sharing stories and remembering what it meant to care. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jenny stood beside the booth by the window and looked around. The light outside faded. but inside, it glowed. She picked up a marker and walked to the window. On the glass, just beneath the Rosie's Diner sign, she wrote, "Whoever you are, whatever you carry, you are welcome here. No one leaves hungry." When she stepped back, Mark read it and nodded. "That's good. Real good." Later that night, Jenny locked up. The bell above the door jingled softly one last time. She turned to look at the empty diner, her place of quiet rebellion, her sanctuary, and now a symbol of something much larger. Before leaving, she whispered to the room, "You did good, kid," then turned off the lights. Because sometimes, changing the world doesn't start with power or money or a platform. Sometimes it starts with a plate of pancakes and a heart that refuses to stop caring. If you believe one small act of kindness can change a life, maybe even a system, then don't just scroll by. Share this story. Subscribe to the channel. Let's keep telling the stories that matter, until no child is invisible and no quiet act of good ever goes unnoticed.